Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Engage More Users by Bringing Your Apps to Outlook Web, Mobile, and Desktop. I'm Wei, and this is Jyoti, and we're both program managers on the Outlook Extensibility team. So for today, what we're going to talk to you all about is the platform from a high level, and then we're going to spend some time showing you what we've been working on these past few months. And then we're going to spend the most of our session diving into how do you actually build add-ins and actionable messages in desktop or OA. And then finally, we're going to close with where we're headed, where we think this platform might be headed. OK, so when we think about the Outlook Extensibility platform, where should we start? Well, the Outlook Extensibility platform actually fits into the Office 365 platform as a whole. And the Office 365 platform leverages Microsoft Graph to bring in the relevant data and intelligence into your apps. And you can use that data to either create your own standalone app or create an extension that is a part of the Office Canvas. So today, for Office Canvases, we have documents such as Word, Excel, and PowerPoints. We have conversations, which are Microsoft Teams and Outlook. And then finally, we have Pages, which is SharePoint. And you can build different types of extensions, whether they're going to launch task panes or maybe insert content into a document to enable users to be as productive as possible within Office. So how does this tie into Outlook? Well, again, we still have this base of Microsoft Graph. So that's how we're bringing that intelligence and making apps smarter so they can provide a more contextual experience for users. But we also have what we're calling UI controls and conversations. Now, the UI controls, some of you might be more familiar with the term add-ins. Now, add-ins insert some controls into the native command surface and allow you to either execute some JavaScript or launch a task pane. While from the conversation point of view, what we see are actionable messages and connectors, allowing users to interact right within their conversation. So the focus of our talk today is how we can bring together the data that we're using, the UI controls, and the conversation integrations to create a complete Outlook experience. And so we're going to start off today by actually showing you a demo from one of our partners, Wrike. Now, they've created a connector, an actionable message, and an add-in to make their scenario complete. So just out of curiosity, how many of you are familiar with the Outlook add-in framework? OK, what about actionable messages? Anybody familiar with connectors at all? OK, so we'll talk about each one of those in more detail, and I'm going to start by showcasing the add-in. So we've been having a lot of preparation going into build, and David, one of our coworkers, was curious to know, hey, I know you guys have been working on this presentation, but I'd like to see it. I want to see the content that you guys are planning on presenting. And so Jyoti and I have been using Wrike. Now, Wrike is an add-in and a service that is set up for project management. And so you can create your own projects and groups. I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And once you've created your groups and your projects, you can go ahead and create tasks. So when you create your task, you can go ahead. Hold on, I'm sorry. OK. So when you create your task, what you're going to see is you're going to be able to see a task pane that's going to open, and it's going to load and pull in the relevant information from the body of your message. So if Wrike was loading and letting me sign in at this moment, what we would see is options for me to assign a task to Jyoti, to set a due date, and then it would automatically add that into Wrike. So while I work on figuring that out, I'm going to hand it over to Jyoti and give her the opportunity to share actionable messages and connectors.
Thanks, Wei. So ideally, so what would have happened was that Wei would have assigned a task to me in Wrike. But let's say I'm actually working on my mailbox and I'm not on Wrike at this moment. So if a task is assigned to me, how do I get to know that, hey, there's something pending on me? So what Wrike does in this case is that every couple of minutes, all the tasks which are actually assigned to you, they just go over them, and if there are any updates, they're going to send you an email about it. Now what Wrike has interestingly done is that they have created this email into an actionable email. So what do I actually mean by that? So we had actually created we were working on another task, like, practicing for the build demo. And at that time, we had created another task in Wrike. So I can go ahead and show it to you over here. This is what Wrike looks like. This is my team. And we have a folder specifically dedicated for our build 2017 preparation. So this is a build demo practice. So she has assigned a task to me. So let me show you what this task will actually look like as an actionable message. So as an actionable message, this is what the task is look like. Now I'm gonna, so you see here, it's not actually a normal email. This is appearing as what we call a card, and I'm going to tell you more details about it a bit later. But here you see it's the same task, build demo practice. So Wrike tells me that it has been updated, it has been sent to me by Wei. And here all the updates that have been done by Wei, like she has included the task into the build 2017 folder. And here she's actually asking me, when shall we have the demo practice? Now I have two options. What I want to do is, I don't want to go back to Wrike at this instance because I'm working in my mailbox. So either I can go ahead and add a comment over here, or what I can do is go ahead and actually set a due date. So I can choose, well, although build is right now, but let me just go ahead and set a due date for 12th. And I'll go ahead and click on change date. Well, yes, the due date was successfully changed. So let me show it to you also. Here you see this part was actually not updated. Here, May 12th, the due date is now immediately updated. So it's really fast, and you can actually stay in your mailbox and perform all sorts of updates to tasks without really leaving your mailbox for quick actions. Now, like Wei had mentioned, our other teammates are also interested in knowing how our preparation is going. So how do we really keep them updated without having multiple, back and forths on the email? So I hope, how many of you have heard about Office 365 groups? Okay, great. So that's what we are doing. We are leveraging Office 365 groups over here. We have created a group over here called Build 2017. Now this group is shared amongst Wei and I, and apart from us, David is also a part of it. What we do is that, this group is not easily addressable via email. So the question comes is, how do you really consume content from other products like Wrike? So for that, we have connectors. So connectors actually allow you to consume third-party information inside these other platforms like Office 365 groups. So here I can show you, I have gone ahead and configured a connector for Wrike already. And the other earlier message that you saw, which the task that you saw about build demo practice, the same card is actually present over here, and I can see all the updates. Now, this is the one I'd like to call your attention towards. This is the date change card, which has just been created, if you see the timestamp also at 2:37 p.m. So what happens is that any update which is happening in the Wrike folder comes immediately in this particular group, and all the other group members can actually see these updates instantly. The other beautiful part over here is that these cards, or these connector cards, are also actionable. So let's say David was actually viewing this card. He could go ahead and add a comment over here, or set a due date, and he could go ahead and do all these kind of changes. So these are basically, just gonna switch back. These are basically, were you able to do it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm actually gonna give Wei an opportunity to demo the Wrike add-in. Now it's working again. Yeah.
So now I've been able to sign in, and you can see that we've been tracking all this work in Jyoti's team. So I'm going to go ahead and click Convert to Task here. And so once I convert to a task, it should show me the actual task. But in this case, it has stopped working again, so I'll pass it over to Jyoti. Let's see this one.
We'll give it one last try.
Just go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so let's switch back to our deck. So these are the different types of extensibilities that we've shown you. You can actually go ahead and have add-ins or actionable messages or connectors for the different kind of platforms that you have. So there are various options available. But the best thing about these is how you can actually cover all the scenarios which are present for your consumer using all the different kinds of extensions. So this is what exists right now. And we want to actually show you what's new that we're working on.
Okay, so firstly, we've been working on the pinnable task pane. Now this is a scenario that we've heard requested from many partners, and it's basically the idea that an add-in can remain open as you're navigating through messages in your inbox. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the experience today, if I click on an add-in, I think there's something wrong with my internet connection. Okay, so if I click on an add-in and the task pane launches, when I switch to a new email, the add-in task pane automatically closes. Now for people who are using their add-ins on 80 to 90% of their mail, this isn't the best solution, right? It's kind of a pain to click and launch that task pane every single time. So I'm going to use Salesforce Inbox here. And what you'll notice first is that there's a pin icon that appears in this corner here. So now once I click on this add-in pin, if I switch to a new message, the information is going to be updated. And this update is happening by the add-in having subscribed to the item change events. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the Salesforce Inbox add-in, I am able to go ahead and create new opportunities based on the contact information that I have here and create records so I can track the work across different companies. So that's the first piece that I wanted to talk to you about. The next piece, I'm going to switch over to Outlook on the web. And in my drafts folder, I've already created an email. And what I'm showcasing here is the block on send functionality. Again, another big request that we received from partners. So what's happening here is basically you can set up an add-in so that it won't allow you to send a message if you don't have a classification. Maybe you have content in the body of the message that you don't want people to send. So in this case, I've put highly confidential and top secret in my message here. And so when I go ahead and try and click send, you'll notice I received this error at the top that's telling me, hey, you have blocked content found here. Now, a note here, add-ins like this won't be able to be submitted to the store. However, you can internally install them for an organization so that they work. The third thing that I wanted to call out is the detected entity extension point. So some of you may have seen this blue highlight that appears in some messages in Outlook on the web. And what it's doing is an add-in is activating on either a regular expression match defined by a developer or a known entity. This could be an address or, in the case of Boomerang, a meeting suggestion. So Shiva sent me a mail, and he's saying, hey, I would really like to sync up after build to talk about how it went, what we learned. And now by clicking on this highlighted text, I'm able to see, one, inside of Boomerang, when I am not available. I have a team sync up at 10. But now I can also go ahead and schedule an event with him and add that event to my calendar. So these are some of the things that we've been working on. And we're going to spend the rest of the session talking about how to build an extension point. OK, so I saw quite a few hands in here having been familiar with add-ins. For all of those hands, had people actually built add-ins? Or, yeah, OK, good majority. So for those of you who may not be familiar with what an add-in is, it's really two parts: a web app, which is the HTML and JavaScript, and then the manifest. And the manifest is important. That's what we install into the Exchange account. That's how we determine where your add-in is going to show up, what it's going to do. Is it going to launch a task pane, or is it going to execute some JavaScript? So I'm going to build an add-in today. And Jyoti and I were talking when we were preparing for building. He said, what would be a great scenario? Well, our team has a lot of group discussions when we want to celebrate something, go out to lunch, where we need consensus. We need to figure out where we're going. So we're going to create an add-in that sends a poll. So I'm going to pull up my Visual Studio. For those of you who have not created an add-in before, I've already created my project, but you can create your new project by going to File, New, and selecting an Outlook add-in. And so once you select on the Outlook add-in, it will go ahead and create a new project for you. It will include the manifest file, the key pieces that you need to go about starting to build an add-in. Now, the add-in is divided into two main sections. There's a base section that's the old experience that we had that horizontal bar and had rules for activation. And then we have this newer section, the version override section. Now, when we announced add-in commands, or those UI controls that could appear on the native command surface in different Outlook clients, we use version overrides 1.0. As we've continued to add extension points like block on send or the detected entities extension points, those go in the version overrides 1.1 section. That's where you define those. And so I'm going to focus on that version overrides 1.1 section today because I'm going to show you how to build an add-in that works in mobile Outlook for iOS. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to define the desktop form factor. The desktop form factor is going to be what's going to show up if I'm on Mac Outlook, Desktop Outlook, Outlook on the web. And what you'll notice here is I'm telling you what type of extension point, so a message read command surface. So I want this to appear when I'm reading messages. I define my control and also the action to show a task pane. The other option I could choose is, again, executing a function. Now, in order to have support for mobile, I need to add a second form factor, the mobile form factor. Now, this structure looks very similar to the desktop form factor in that the main differences are there's a few more icons that are required to be specified. The extension point name is different, mobile read, message read command surface. But again, the action is still the same, showing that task pane. So now we've gone ahead and created our manifest. So before this meeting, I already had deployed all of my files into Azure. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this link and I'm going to go in and install the manifest for you. So if I was going to go install the manifest, I'd go here, I'd select Manage Integrations. And this is for side loading. This is how I'm going to test my add-in. I'm going to click here to add a custom add-in, and I could add from URL. And I would paste it here and click OK, and it would add it for me. So I've already had it installed, and I wanted to show you guys what it's looking like right now. So I did some work. I created a way for you to fill in a question, some answers, a button that when you press Create Poll takes you to two options, copying the link or going ahead and sharing as a reply. Now, for our scenario, what's going to be the most valuable is going to be sharing that link out to our team so that we can figure out where we're going to go to dinner after build is over. So I'm going to go ahead back into Visual Studio and switch over to my JavaScript. Now we want this to work for mobile, so we need to make sure that we're leveraging our REST. So when I go and create REST API, so when I go and grab a callback token, I want to make sure that I have my isREST parameters set to true. And then when I grab my item ID using our Office.js APIs, I'm going to also use our API to convert that to a REST ID so I can go ahead and construct my URL to make that REST request. And then I've just added a simple body. I've created a survey, here's the link to the survey. Now, I could just go ahead with this, but if I did that, you wouldn't actually know if the message was sent off successfully. And the way that we can show success of messages is by leveraging our notification API, which you can choose to have an informational message, which in this case would say this has been successfully completed, or maybe it didn't send. So I can also provide an error notification message that says it wasn't the message failed to send. Now there's one last piece. Remember I mentioned that I was developing for Outlook Mobile. So when you're in Outlook Mobile, the add-in isn't going to appear like desktop. It's not going to be where I can see my message and I can see my task pane. That task pane is going to take up the whole screen. And so in the case of our add-in, once you share out that poll as a reply, you're done with your add-in, and we know that. And so as part of our new API requirement set 1.5, we have gone ahead and implemented a closed container API. Now what this means is when this is called, after all of my message has been sent off successfully, it will close and it will take me back to the message that I was already in. So I'm taken right back into that context of the email that I was working on. Okay. So, since I've already had this in Salty, can you switch over to 6? Let's go ahead and try this out in Outlook Mobile. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Outlook Mobile. And this icon that looks like the 3 squares with the 1 square coming in, that's the add-in icon. I'm going to go ahead and select Create a Survey. And I'm going to say, where should we eat? Can have Thai Tom, Vanessa, Tacos Chukis. If any of you guys are visiting and haven't been to any of these restaurants, they're all pretty good and around this area. So I'm going to go ahead and create the poll, and then I'm going to share as a reply. And I have not updated my files on Azure. So I'm going to go ahead and copy them over. And take this again. Okay, so we'll try this again. I have had quite the morning with my computer. It decided that it wasn't going to connect to the internet this morning. I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure this out. So,
The phone is not connected.
it's connected to Wi-Fi.
Okay, it's showing us.
Okay, well, so again, I'm so sorry, guys. I have created this add-in. I will come back and show you that it's working. But in the meantime, how I could make it even better is instead of sending that link over to everyone on our team to complete and follow their response, we could make it even more actionable by inserting an actionable message, which is what Jyoti is going to go ahead and show you.
Okay, so Wei showed you a scenario where we have a add-in sending out an email. Let me actually first go over actionable messages. So like I had shown you in the case of Write, what you have is your simple email, which has now been converted into a much more powerful form because the user can actually take actions right within the email. So all just by inserting that actionable card inside the email. So other things about these actionable messages are they're consistent because you see the card layout that I had shown you, and it's consistent across any kind of OA platform that you will see or other platforms. It's consistent, safe, and secure. And the third thing that's really good about this is the dynamic card refresh mechanism. So let's say you have actually sent an email to your user. The user actually takes an action on that particular email. Now, based on the kind of action that the user has taken, you can decide to either show a simple success or a failure message, or you can actually go ahead and change the entire card that the user is seeing. So that's what the dynamic refresh card mechanism is, and you can even refresh this card. So I'm going to show you how that works. But before that, overall, what I'd like to say is that there are two kinds of scenarios in which actionable messages can really work. One is that, let's say you have a product which is used across multiple organizations. So in this case, your product is already sending emails to these different organizations. So here, really, your actionable messages are really useful. You can convert these emails to actionable emails. The second kind of scenario is, like, let's say you are in an organization, you have very organization-specific scenario. Like in Microsoft, we have an expense tool. Similar to that, in other organizations, you can have various other kind of approval mechanisms. So these are scenarios which are only applicable to those particular organizations, the line of business scenarios. So these are also something that you can actually enable with actionable messages as a developer. So once we are done with the scenarios, actually let me tell you how exactly it's going to work. So here, the green box, you have your service. This is basically a third-party service which is actually going to send the email to Outlook. And the first step is that this particular third-party service is actually going to send the an actionable email to any given address, let's say at contoso.com to Office 365. The first thing Office 365 is going to do is it's going to validate the sender. So this particular sender address that you're using, the sender domain, needs to be registered with Office 365 for it to be actually able to send the actionable message. Now, if it is not registered, then the actionable message is going to be removed, stripped off from the email, and the rest of the body of the email is going to remain the same. Now, you might think it makes things difficult, but if you want to try it out yourself, you want to go ahead and start working with actionable messages, you can send an email to yourself. That is going to work perfectly fine. Only when you start sending emails to other email addresses, you will need to get that particular sender domain registered. So that's the first step. Next, so once this validation has been done by Office 365, the message is going to go to the user. The user will be able to see it in whichever client they are in, either OA or Outlook. Now, the user sees the actionable message, and then the user can go ahead and take an action. So we have this middle tier called as Office Action Execution Agent. So this is the one which is actually talking to the third party and to the client, and this is going to do a couple of things. The first thing is that it's going to actually validate if the target URLs which are actually being used to execute the action in the third party, if these target URLs have also been registered. So these also need to be registered with Office 365. The second thing is that we make only HTTPS calls, so the service actually needs to have a valid SSL certificate, basic for security. And the third thing, after these two validations, it's going to add an authorization header to this particular request. Then the same request is actually going to head over to the service, so you receive an HTTP post request. So this authorization header actually contains, JSON Web Token, the JWT token, and your service or the third-party service can actually use this particular token to ensure and verify that the request is coming from a trusted source, which is in this case Office 365. So once this, once this validation is done, the service can go ahead and execute the action. Now, once this action is executed, based on the status, it can be either success or it can be, failure. The response actually goes back to the Office execution agent, and then the same response is sent over to the user in the in whichever client they're viewing. So it might look really long, but you saw that all these things happen quite fast. The next thing which I'm going to do is actually build an actionable message. So how many of you, I saw that many people are aware of it, but has anybody over here built an actionable message? Okay, so I think all of you will find this very useful. Okay, so let me switch over to my laptop. Okay. So I'm going to take the same scenario, as in just to make things consistent. So it's again a survey that I'm going to create. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send this particular survey to the two of us, Wei and I, and as an actionable email. So the first thing we have over here is a simple, sample application that we've actually created for the purpose of demo. That's it, and it's written using WCF. If you want to, you can use whatever you want for this purpose. I'm gonna this is a default. I'm just gonna change these recipients to us. So if you look at this particular application, it's very straightforward. You have the survey title, whatever, just to add something to the title of the survey. You have the question that you want to ask. It's the same poll question. In this case, I'm asking your meal preference instead of where you want to go. And there are a couple of options over here which I have provided. So when I click on Send Survey, it's going to actually send an actionable email containing this particular question to Wei and I. Now, before this, like I had mentioned, the first step is that the sender actually needs to be registered with Microsoft. So I've already gone ahead and done that step. The sender who is sending this particular email is registered, so you will be able to see an actionable message. Now, so the email part is the service part is pretty straightforward. You just create a survey, and we are using Exchange Web Services to create the actual email. It's a standard email. The interesting part comes into here is that how do you really make it an actionable message? So for that, what you can do is you can head over to our developer documentation that we have. So we have it in docs.microsoft.com/en-us/outlook. So let me go there. Okay, here we are. So you see here on the left-hand side, we have this actionable messages. So I'm going to just go into that, go to Get Started, and go to Actionable Messages via email. Now, I think, okay, so it looks like the first thing that we have to do is actually, go to Card Playground. So, like I mentioned when I was showing you the actionable message, that there was this card that was being shown to you. So that's the first bit of it that we need to figure out how to do. So for that, we'll head on to the Message Card Playground. So this card that you see on the right-hand side is like a full-fledged version of what can be present in an actionable message card. And we actually use a JSON payload to actually create this particular card. So you see, we have the JSON payload on the left and the card on the right. I will show you a sample card. Let me go to Trello, card created. So we have a bunch of sample cards over here. Depending upon the kind of scenario that you want, you can browse through this, pick a particular scenario, and then use that to get started. I picked this Trello one because it is very similar to Rike, so you might be able to relate to it. We have a heading of the card over here, name of the card. And then you see it's very, so here on the left hand side you have the title of the JSON. So the same way you have this is a section, this entire thing that you see over here is a section. This is the activity title, and all the values over here can be easily seen. Now the good part here is that you can, if you want to make some changes, the name of the card or anything like that, you can immediately do it. So you actually have a very simple way of creating the card the exact way you want it. Now, there are a couple of other things like facts and all, and you can explore it when you have a chance to look at this. The important thing over here in actionable messages is the actions. So these are the actions which are available to you right now. Set due date, move. This is basically a list picker, and add a comment, which is a text input. So this section of it, the potential action section, is the one which describes the actions. So let's look at the first one. This is the set due date action, the first one that we are seeing over here. It's called the type is an action card, because you need to have, the user needs to provide at least one input to actually submit this. In this case, that input is the date. Then you have the regular things like the name, which is set due date. Other inputs like the type of input that the user has to provide. In this case, it's the date input. Apart from that, ID, title, things you can actually check out. Actions. So this is another important part. So we make an HTTP post, like I had mentioned. the target URL basically, which you have to, which is at your end, which is your target URL of your service where the action execution is actually going to take place, that's provided in this particular target over here. Now, if the target URL is enough to actually give you all the parameters to perform the action, that's good. Otherwise, you can attach a body to it also, and I'll show that to you in the code how it's done. So here we have the card. So I already created the card that I plan to use for this particular scenario, and I have the JSON for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this JSON, and I'm going to show you what this card is actually going to look like. So this is what the card will look like. And again, it's I have defined the actions which are present over here. I have given the title of the card, etc. And these are the options that you're going to see in the actual email. Okay, so our card is ready. So let's head back to the developer documentation to see what are the next steps. Okay, I'm just going to go to this part of it because I want to bring your attention to it first. So we have the JSON that's done, that's ready. So the JSON actually needs to be wrapped in a script tag, just a couple of instructions that you can even go through later. The interesting part here is that this particular JSON is not present in the body of the email. This in the HTML document of the email, this is present in the head. So that's something important. So that's what is given over here. The script tag will be present in the HTML head. If you see this section of it, this is where we are actually providing the actionable message JSON. Now, you might be wondering then what happens to the body, because there are some clients where this actionable messages will not work, like your email is going out to various users who are on different types of clients. So what about those clients where this message actually will not get rendered as a card? So the body that you see over here, this particular body, that's still in your hands. You can go ahead and either put a message saying actionable messages don't work, or whatever is the standard email that you send out in earlier cases, that can be provided over here. So that scenario is going to work perfectly fine. Now, you have the actionable card and you have the body. But in my case, I don't want the body to actually show up when I'm sending. My card has all the information, so I don't want the body to show up. So what do I do about that? So for that, we can actually go to the first step. So we have this attribute called hide original body. So I'm going to set that to true. Because of that, the body will actually not show up, and only the card is going to show up in the email. So let's go back to the code. This here is my service, send survey request. I think I can just show it to you quickly. This is the main action which is implementing it. The main function which is implementing it. So what we are doing over here, we are just using an object model to create the card, and we are setting all the fields of the card over here. And like this is the way of implementing we actually chose. It's up to you if you want to insert it as a actual JSON, and you'll have to escape all the characters here. So like I had mentioned, the action part of it. So here we have only one action, which is submit, and this is the implementation of that particular submit action. This is a target. So I have a URL, and apart from a URL, I also have a body which has additional parameters. So I'm setting both of them. So it's your choice the way you want to do it. Here I'm going to serialize this particular card, convert it to JSON. Like I had mentioned, we have Exchange Web Services. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that's it. So I'm all set for sending out the email. So I'll head back to this and just click on send survey. What this should do is it'll send me an email, and it will also send me an email. Okay, this was successfully done. Okay, this is the new survey demo which is over here. Now I've been showing you everything in OVA, but the great thing now is that we have been working hard to actually provide support for actionable messages in Outlook Desktop, and starting with Outlook 2016, we are very soon going to be supporting actionable messages in desktop also. And like I had mentioned, the card, it looks like it's very, very consistent. It's going to look the same in the desktop version also. So here you see we have the exact same thing which I showed you in the message playground over here. this card, the same card is actually showing up in my desktop also. I have the same options present over here. I'm a vegetarian, so I'm going to go ahead and choose that option, and I'm going to hit submit. But the thing is that there has to be a service which is actually consuming the response from this particular survey, and that needs to be invoked. So I have commented out that part of the code, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to uncomment that part. I'm going to invoke the service which is actually running. So this is a service which we have created. It's hosted on Azure Websites.net, and what it simply does is that once I submit my response, it's going to take this response, just create an entry in the database, and it's going to store the response. The interesting part of this is, so there are some more things that I actually want to do. I don't just want the user to submit the response and then sit and wonder, okay, what happened. The first thing that I want is that the user, after they submit, they should be able to see what the other folks have also chosen. So in my case, I want to see what the other people are choosing. Are they also interested in vegetarian? So that's one thing that I want to do additionally in this case. And the other thing is that when I submit the response, it's not necessary that everybody actually will go ahead and submit the response immediately to the survey. People take their own sweet time to actually respond. So how do I actually get to know later on? So for that, I want the card also to refresh. So those are the two things that I'm planning to do right now. So the first thing is submit response. So I'm just going to show you what we are planning to do over here. I'll just head to this submit response. Here, like I had mentioned, it's quite simple, just inserting an entry into the database. After that, I'm going to call this function called generate stats card. Now, this is the one, like I had mentioned earlier. This is my card that I see right now, but after I submit, I want the user to see a brand new card. I want the user to actually see something like, okay, great, thanks for responding, and here are this is your response. So this what this part of it does is, it'll show you this is your response, and here are what the other options actually, what are the other options statistics right now. So this is what generate stats card is going to do. I'm just going to minimize this part. And the last part is, like I had mentioned, I want the user to be able to see the latest poll results at any particular given time. So for that, we have this refresh stats card, which is just going to go ahead and call the function of generate stats card. So any given time, the card can actually be refreshed by the user. All this is well and good, but there's a very important thing, which is this line over here. So basically, we need to, as Office 365, you need to actually specify that there is another new card in the response that you're sending across. So after I actually hit submit and the request goes to this particular third-party service is sending me another new card. Now, you also need to specify that there will be a new card present. So that's why this card update in body has been set to true. So we have everything ready. I have uncommented this. I will save this and just do a quick build. Okay, that's done. And I'll go ahead and, because I made the changes, I'll have to publish this particular service again. Let me just do that. And that should be done quickly. Okay, that's done. So I'm heading back to the same one. So here you see it said the action could not be completed. I already have the option selected, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit submit again. Here you go. So this is the new card that I wanted the user to actually see. Thanks for responding And this is my response, vegetarian. And right now, other people have not responded. So this survey has actually also gone to Wei. So I'm just going to ask her, okay, I think you've already responded. So Wei has just responded. So right now you see that right now you only see my response. If I click on refresh statistics, here you go. So Wei had actually responded as gluten-free, and that also shows up over here. So this is overall how actionable messages work. You can power great scenarios using this. I'm going to head back to the deck. Okay, so we've been working with a lot of partners to actually, power great scenarios. One example that you actually saw in the demo was Rike. They have gone ahead and enabled actionable messages and add-ins. Apart from that, we've been working with a couple of other partners also. You saw connectors also, which were actually actionables. So there are a couple of other ones like, Visual Studio, Stack Overflow, Yammer. So these also now have actions enabled in their connector cards. So some of the great scenarios that we're working on and, good things we are doing together. Now, you saw an add-in. You saw how an add-in was built. You saw me actually create this particular survey actionable message from a sample application. But I think the good part would be if you create the add-in and the add-in is actually able to send the actionable message. So that's something Wei is going to do now.
But before I do that, I'm going to go back. I figured out that for some reason my manifest was actually not installed. So I'm going to show you. I've already populated my poll with the information, and if I go ahead and select create poll and share as reply. Oh, come on. It works when I'm not showing you guys. I'm not having a lucky day with demos. Okay.
I think we can't have the party. That's why.
I know. They don't want us to celebrate. Okay, I'm going to just fill in some of these and go ahead and click create, and hopefully, fingers crossed. Okay. See, it says that the survey was sent successfully. Yes. All right. So you can see here, I've sent out a link in the body of the message. So now let's go back, now that Jyoti has shown us how to create actionable messages, and go ahead and put that back in. So let's go back and look at our JavaScript where I created this simple body here. And so what I'm going to do is actually insert some actionable message information here, right? All of that card content, I'm going to save it. Grab this, update my share.js. And now we're going to come back over here to my celebration and say, where should we eat? Okay, a little nervous. Let's see. So it's been sent successfully, but it hasn't updated yet. So let me go check. Okay. I'll try this one more time.
Oh, I have it. You want to show it from here?
Yeah, you can show it from here. All right, so now we were able to actually insert an actionable message that has all of our options. And if you were to press a vote, I'm not sure if they won't work on yours. I don't think so.
There's no service at the back.
Yeah, there's no service at the back. So if you press vote, then you could have connected it to your service, and then it would have been able to show that you voted successfully.
Yeah.
All right, so the idea here that we were trying to showcase, and we talked about a little bit at the beginning, was this concept of not only focusing on a single aspect of, I need to create an add-in, and the add-in is going to be my complete solution for users, but actually leveraging actionable messages or connectors and add-ins together to make that story more complete. So I can actually create the content that I want to send out, but I can also take useful, productive actions from within my conversation without having to be navigated outside of Outlook. And so this is kind of the path that we're headed down. And I'm going to hand it over to Jyoti to talk a little bit about where we're headed.
Okay, so you saw what we've been working on, what we've been working on so far. So what we are going to work on looking forward is firstly parity across Outlook clients. I think we hear that a lot from folks about providing the similar capabilities across all the Outlook clients. The second thing is we also want to work on new capabilities and APIs for add-ins. And lastly, you saw actionable messages right now in OA and Outlook Desktop. So there are more Outlook clients, and we intend to keep working on this so that we can make it available across all different sorts of clients. Now, okay, so call to action. So I think a lot of you showed interest in add-ins, actionable messages. So our call to action for you would be go ahead, visit our go ahead and visit our developer documentation. Here you will find all the information that is actually needed to go ahead and start building your scenarios and making Outlook and your service much more powerful for great user experiences. You can expand your Outlook scenarios by leveraging these new extensions. You can build an add-in with Outlook mobile support now, reach new platforms with connectors. By the way, I'm not sure, so how many of you are aware about Microsoft Teams? Okay, great. So in Teams, the integration with third-party services with Microsoft Teams is also powered by connectors. So you have connectors available even in Microsoft Teams. So if you want to go ahead and have your product available on Microsoft Teams or Office 365 groups, you should go ahead and do it. And lastly, if you want any scenarios that you want us to work on and support, then leave us your comments on officespdev.uservoice.com. Now, there are a couple of other related sessions if you're interested in finding out more information. So you can either watch some of these, in case if they are over, you can watch them on channel 9, or you can go ahead and head down to these. Some of the ones which we would like to recommend is the second one regarding Microsoft Graph, third one regarding introduction to the Teams developer platform, and lastly, I think last one, deep dive into Office add-in single sign-on. Now, we greatly appreciate any kind of feedback that you have for us. What can we do better? What can we improve on? So please do provide your input to us, and we can work on it and do much better next time. And that's all, folks. We are open to questions if anybody has any questions.
Yes.
So when you make update, or when an actionable message card is updated, does it stay updated, or does it revert back to its initial state and you navigate back to it afterwards?
No, so it stays updated. Give me a second.
Repeat the question so they can hear it.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So the question was that once an update is actually made to the actionable message card, does it stay updated or does it revert back to its original state? So like you can see in this case, whatever is the last state of the card, it will stay there unless you hit on refresh statistics and the next update is made. Yes?
You mentioned connectors for Teams as well. Is that a build once solution? You just port it over to Teams? Something you built for something else?
I'm sorry,
Is it a build once? Like a build once, like write once and build once, like you build it for Outlook or Teams?
Yes, so if you have built a connector for Microsoft Teams, the same can actually be made available in Office 365 groups also.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, we'll hang around in case anyone wants to come up and ask questions.
thank you.